Speaking of Harriet Tubman, our next speaker is a board member of the Harriet Tubman Learning Center. He would have been here last week speaking at our 300th rally during Black History Month. Could not make it, but is here with us this week. Please welcome back to Justice Southbury, Wayne Winston.
Wow, what a crowd, what a crowd, what a crowd. One, I have to tell you, I don't like to give a whole lot of my resume, but I need to do this to make my point early on. One, I'm on the board of Harriet Tubman Learning Centers. Rita Daniels is a descendant of Harriet Tubman. So whenever I speak, I actually represent the family because she has been represented and recognized in the state of Connecticut through Senator Blumenthal, Congressman Himes, even the governor. So when I say things, I'm very, very conscious of what I say. I also started an organization called the Anti-Racism Coalition during the pandemic. And I was, again, able to have these great leaders of our state come and speak and give encouragement, because it was a very difficult time. Remember, it was anti-vaccine. There was a crazy story coming out of all over the place about George Floyd was a junkie, all those other things, getting away from what the humanity really was. And that was the beginning of the attack. I need to say this because serving on so many boards, I've worked with Reverend Jesse Jackson. I've even worked with Emmett Till's family, which basically started the civil rights movement when Amy decided she was not going to cover her son's body after he was dumped in the water, had literally, you know, the kind of barbed wire you see on the top of fences. They wrapped his body up in that, and they cut off his ears, and they took off his penis. They don't tell you that. When they threw him in the water, and it took the FBI to come down to finally sort that out. So to say that people can be dangerous and hateful, and how can you do that? These people exist, and they exist in places that we don't want to believe it, but it's real. Justice Southbury, it's got to be one of my favorite organizations because they did the impossible, man. I don't know if Rick and the fam and you know, people I see all the time with you guys, if you knew it was going to last this long. I mean, 301 weeks? Come on, you got to give yourself, there's nobody that I've heard of in America that has done 301 weeks. And I work in media. I'm on WICC down Southern Connecticut. You know, you can listen to our podcast and all that other kind of stuff. I'm also a regular contributor to News 12, which is also, you know, down in Fairfield County. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to speak about these issues concerning our people. America is the greatest country on the planet, hands down, but they're not perfect. The only person that's perfect is up there, and I haven't seen him walking around lately, and I'm glad because he comes back, if you know anything, that's not the time you want, you know, unless you've been doing the right thing, then you're all right. We have people in the administration who want to take us back to a time that we already fought, that literally we won. The civil rights movement was exactly that. It was people like us that made sure that happened. When you have the Underground Railroad, there's no Underground Railroad with our white supporting families. There weren't black homes they were going to. I mean, it just didn't exist. I mean, it was just getting from the south all the way up to the north and just trying to make it. And this wasn't on horseback. There weren't any carts sitting there waiting around the corner like you see in the movies. I couldn't imagine walking through a whole state, let alone 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Harriet Tubman never got caught. And she went back, statistically, what we know of, 18 plus times. Now you can get 18 to 25, 18 to 30. Imagine that, just doing that one time and going back to the same hostile places. They're still looking for her. She wound up becoming a general. She was awarded as a general because her strategy is what helped win the Civil War, because she knew all the bayous down there. She helped the Union Army. So when the Confederates pulled into a certain place, she's like, I know that area. I know how to get to it. I know where you need to go to circle around to get them. And she was a key and changing that so we could get where we are. Now, if you remember, there was something that said, the South will rise again. This is bigger than the South, because there are people who believe that we should not be equal. They want to separate it, and they've said it flat out. I mean, part of what was happening in the beginning is that we didn't want to believe where it was going. When you have people that say DEI is the bane of America, it takes an effort to fix something that's broken. Am I right or wrong? So if you have people who, for the majority of the time that they're in this country, were denied the rights to even pick a president, even though they fight in every single war that we've had from the Civil War throughout the whole time, and you say to them, well, you're still not citizens, you're still not ready for equal access. In fact, Nazis, Germans, they have a tape that says they were treated better than the black people in this country. How deep is that? And these were the guys who were murdering the Jews. You know what I mean? It just basically, the solution is like to get rid of all of them. What mindset do you have to have when you think a specific group of people should be wiped off the face of the earth? So whether you like with someone's policies in another country or whatever that is, they deserve a place to live. Am I right or wrong? Yeah. They deserve a place in this America, which is the melting pot. I think there's hypocrisy when I hear stories of people coming in and saying, boy, when my family came here, they came in through Ellis Island, and they had a nickel in their pocket. My dad, my family. You know, we worked real hard, and we got to build a business, and now my family's doing great. We send money back. We got my mom, we got my cousin, we had a family here. And we grew up in America because you have birthright citizenship. When you're born here, you're an American citizen. It's the best thing ever, and rightfully so. Whether you're Italian, Polish, Jewish, whatever you are. I have a good Italian friend. We grew up together. He used to eat at my house, and his father, he used to say, hey, feed him some more. He's not eating enough, because I was a little skinnier at that time. Come on, feed him some more. The mother, come on out there, you know. So, man, Sally and Charlie, really good people in Napoli. I don't know if they're the pizza people at this point. I don't know, because there's a few of them around the state. I know that people love because of who they are. All throughout the time in this country, there was a famous case, and the family happened to be Mr. and Mrs. Love, L-O-V-E. There's a movie. You can type it in and find it. This is during a time that this white man could be beaten to death just for marrying this black woman. She could have been murdered just because she married this white man. How insane is that? The civil rights movement was about fixing that. There were people just like you who marched in it to change it, and what we got out of that was the Civil Rights Act, 1965. The Civil Rights Act said, this is not acceptable. They will be able to pick a president. We will treat them equally, even though we haven't, because it was an admission of guilt. Hey, guys, you know, we can't go press a button and go fix that, but we can at least start from here. So there were things like Pell Grants that came out. We're going to allow you now to go to college because we had to create HBCUs, historically black colleges. Why? Because they didn't want us in the regular school system. So what are we going to do? Say, remain uneducated? So we wind up creating some of the best colleges in the country. Someone in the administration decides, why do we need them? What's the point? Because there's still challenges like we're facing right now in this country. So HBCUs start out as an alternative in many times the only place that you can get an education. And they gave us some of the greatest minds in the country. So I think of Black History Month, I wanted to share this. It's not just about Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, et cetera, to quote Malcolm X, the regulars. It's about Jan Matlinger, who created the lasting machine, meaning shoes. Up until what he created, they all had to be sewn on by hand. He invented this thing himself and revolutionized the shoe industry. And they could do 1,000 times more work than they could do before. and the locomotive, the transportation industry. Black people changed that. Back in the day, if you were on a train, they had to pull over so often. If you watch like the old Western, you have to pull out that long can and squirt it in the wheels, and eventually it doesn't break down. Well, he invented something called the self-lubricating pump, specifically for an engine on a train. Obviously, this is a good idea. You know what happens when you have a good idea, right? Somebody copies it, right? His machine was so well done and so effective. When the companies called to buy a self-lubricating machine for their trains, they asked, was it the real McCoy? His name was Elijah McCoy. That's where that came from. See, there's a lot of stories like this. You know, so many of you served. You served this country, man. There's no higher gift than you can give. But black soldiers were removed. They said, no, we can't have you recognized for the Purple Heart or for the Silver Star. You know, and all of these crazy things. We're still finding out, and they're awarding people now that gave their lives and gave their service during the Second World War, First World War, all the way back, and black families are fighting for that. I think every one of you would understand that's good. I think that's a great thing going forward. I was a Boy Scout. I didn't know about what Rick just shared. That was one of the keys to be good to people, be courteous to people, to make sure you did something. They made you do stuff as a Boy Scout to get that merit badge. And to say, this is no longer important because we want to militarize you. It sounds too much something like that happened overseas when there was another guy with a little mustache over there. It's like there's so many things we hear that are like plays right out of his book, man. And the thing is so scary. We have to understand, even though we don't want to believe it, you have to start looking at guys like Stephen Miller. He's the campaign strategist. Stephen Miller has already said flat out, white people and white men for America. That's his goal. Not me make it up. He says it because they don't have to hide it anymore. They're at that place now where they have to stay in office because they are on this path and they really don't care where you're coming from. They need to keep in office to finish this insane plan that brings women back to a time where you couldn't have a checking account unless your husband signed for it. That was 1975. How insane is that? They've already put that on the table. There's something called Project 2025. You guys heard of that? The book, okay. Had a lot of things about black people. And so we was kind of like, whoa, this is going to be crazy. There's things about women and too. And they talked about the ultimate America, the MAGA, what that really meant. It wasn't just a difference of politics. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But when you put laws in place, you change how people live. Because that's not subjective. When you make it a law, one of the things that upset me when President Trump signed in, had all these executive orders. One of the ones he signed within the first couple days is, he said, I signed this executive order because it went to the court system a bit already, advocated through his people. He said, I just fixed 50 years of a mistake. That was the Civil Rights Act. Because that was 2025. That was 60 years. And he said, I just corrected a mistake. So does this sound like someone that supported the beliefs that you have? I mean, I'm not here to like, hey, pick us, I'll come over to my party, go over there. I'm not talking about that. This is where we are, and this is who they are. And they're flat out saying, I'm sure you heard about the thing with President Obama and his wife, Michelle, being treated, makes this whole thing like animals. Come on, man. How do you have that from the highest land in the country? And still, 24 hours later, they had no apology. Then they finally took it down. I'm saying, my friends, this is the time we have to stand together. It's not the civil rights movement of the 60s. This is the one for 2026. There's so many different tools that they have, the media that they have. And I'm going to wind it up with this. Media control, part of their playbook. CBS was taken over because they needed to be able to control the narrative in the mainstream media. They had their own, Fox News, but that's streaming. You needed something there. So remember TikTok. TikTok had a deadline that it had to be sold to an American company or they're going to shut it down. So the powers that be get with Oracle and they get with Skydance, both very friends of somebody we all know, and they make the deal and they buy it from the Redmond family, who did not want to sell it. That's the Redstone family, Sherry Redstone. They didn't want to sell it, but they forced them to because it says, if you don't take this, we're going to sue you. And we're going to ask for a ridiculous amount of money. We'll keep you in court forever. So they settled, and they gave it to CBS. They came out and said, we are going to make this less DEI. They fired whole divisions, whole departments of people who look like me, Hispanic, and everything else, while building up that desensitization that so much has happened with watching our brothers and sisters, which got Renee Good killed, and the people all behind that. Because you desensitize people so much, you got to go on with your life, and you just go, oh my God, this is horrible, 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 because that's how our brains work. Now let me fast forward to now, because CBS, they fired so many people on the network, it's crazy. They were just able to acquire Warner Brothers. Netflix had a signed deal with Warner Brothers. Done deal. The chairman of CBS calls his dad, who's got as much money as, no, not as much as Elon Musk, but he got a lot of money. He's like, look, I need to get in on this deal because Netflix can't have Warner Brothers. And he says, flat out in the news again, I would like you, Mr. President, to intervene because I want in on this deal. Now remember, it's the signed paperwork between Netflix and Warner Brothers. If you get me in on this deal, I will make CNN more pro-Trump. Not me making up. In media, all of this stuff comes through. There's so much you can't keep up. We can't even keep up. But I'm sitting there watching this, I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like right in our face main news. So, Netflix hit a few more offers. The money comes through. In the background, the word is, if you don't take this deal or let it go, Netflix, we can keep you going around and around and around because we got a lot of money back here. And we also got a lot of courts. And the FCC guy is my guy. He's going to do what I tell him to do. So he could turn down the FCC deal, period, and just go like, nope, it's not a good idea for America. So now that influence is not just on CBS, and they're still pretty good. That's what I know some people work there. It has now happened that they have taken over Warner Brothers and the subsidiaries that they have of streaming. We're in a two-pronged place. There's more media to affect us. This didn't happen before. But it doesn't change? The people like yourself, man, to stay awake, to participate. God bless all of you to come out here, whether it's rain or snow. I talk about you all over the place. You're more legend than you know about in New York, whatever. In fact, a young lady's watching this right now. You guys know Jasmine Crockett? You heard of her? Okay. Now, first, let's give Jasmine Crockett a hand. It's going to be a very difficult race because this time they're going to cheat in every way they know how. The stolen election will be our people, not them. So I ran into this young lady some time ago, and she is super energetic. She's running Jasmine's campaign, but you need to know what happened with Jasmine. Jasmine obviously has been a needle in the side of the Republican Party and a lot of people. So it was time for election. So remember, they're redrawing maps all over the place. They said, okay, I know what to do. Rather than running somebody against her, let's just rewrite the whole district and take her position out. They took her completely out of the district. You can't run in a district that doesn't exist anymore, right? How horrible, grimy, and everything else you want to think of is that? So to play fair, all this other kind of stuff, from a moral standpoint, absolutely. But now you have a candidate who can't run. There's another candidate who's running for Senate because she's a congressperson. He's a black man. Steps back and says, you know what, Jasmine? I'm going to step down from my campaign, and I'm going to let you take my spot. So Jasmine is running for senator right now because she is there. And please give that a hand. Man, listen, that's the kind of thing we need because we have to take the House back in the Senate. So I want to give a shout out to Lady Ray out in Texas right now. In fact, she's organizing some stuff today. And I wish we could have her on the phone or something, but just to say, give her a round of applause because she's out there doing the work with Jasmine Crockett. So we have great people here in Connecticut. We're a very blue state, as you know. If you can help other places when that time comes, if you have people in other states, talk about this. I'm just trying to give you information so that you know, because knowledge is power. And that's the one thing they cannot stop, and that's the one thing they're frightened of. Because we outnumber them. Let me say again, I don't care what you see in the poll, we outnumber them. But they're there to control that media and to discourage you. But I'm not discouraged because I got friends like Rick over here, okay, and all of you over here. And I really, really appreciate how much that you do out of your time every single Sunday, and my guy over here as well. So I won't go any longer. I want to make sure that I share something about women, because I know someone else is going to speak. Okay. I think that siren was going like, yay, women, Right on time. When Martin Luther King made his famous speech, I Have a Dream, he was going on pretty well. Mahalia Jackson comes up into his ear because it's going well. But Mahalia Jackson comes up and whispers in his ear. She's a global superstar, gospel superstar. She says, tell him about the dream, Martin. And that's when he goes to the dream speech, because he had done that in the church. And that's how that got into history, is being in one of the most incredible oratory performances of all time. So thank you so much for, letting me speak for a few minutes. I was a little long-winded, but man, we're fighting out here, man, and I need every one of you. So, hey, whatever I can do, thank you very much. Look, you guys are standing in the snow. I'm impressed, boy. Look, I'm telling you, you can't be standing this up for 5 minutes in the snow. So, thanks, Rick.